Hope everyone's having a blessed Sunday morning, guys. The time has come. We are doing the Lovecraft short stories ranked. We got four stories in particular today that we're going to be ranking. I'm not going to tell you the title because it gives you an incentive to stay for the whole video. Um, as you can see, though, we got a new setup here today from the usual background we're working with. I have like a little table set up in front of me. I'm actually about 4'2" or 4'3". I'm a very short individual, so it may look like I'm sitting on the ground, but I'm actually standing at full height. That's just a joke, of course. I'm actually 5'6" in real life, guys. So the four stories in particular that I read, quick edition showcase of the book that I read from. This little Lovecraft collected horror short stories. One of those like basic classic editions that you see at like Books a Million that's like on sale for like $5.97. You got little sevens on there because that's the cheapest it's gonna get. But the stories in particular we're going to be ranking is The Color Out of Space. Color Out of Space. Yeah. The Dunwich Horror, The Call of Cthulhu, and At the Mountains of Madness. And we're gonna be ranking from 4 to 1. So we're gonna start with my least favorite story. But I would like to clarify that I really did enjoy all of these stories, and it's pretty evident why Lovecraft is considered, although being every sort of phobia in the book, homophobia, racist. That's not phobia, but his writing, to the death of the author, his writing itself, there is it's understandable why he's considered the godfather of cosmic horror, the way he writes. The further we get into this video and talk about the stories, naturally, the further I will get into my specific likes and dislikes of Lovecraft's craft of writing. But first, guys, in the number 4 spot, again, I love the story. This is arguably my favorite story, which is kind of confusing why I would put it last, but or paradoxical. At the 4th spot, we have At the Mountains of Madness. Like I just said, I actually think this is one of my favorites. I really love this story, but the reason I'm rating it in the 4th spot is like there's a lot of investment that needs to be put on the behalf of the reader, a lot of trust that the reader needs to put into the author with this story. Which surprisingly, this was the first Lovecraft story that I've ever been exposed to, and it's was considerably my favorite. But I could see this not being a good starting point, maybe for some people into the Lovecraft discography. What I mean by investment is this book is like Lovecraft's Silmarillion. I mean, we're getting a lot of history here of a certain species that's going to play a super important role in the rest of his like connected universe. But I mean, there is multiple pages where these archaeologists sort of come across the lore of the aliens, the old things or the old ones, and we sort of get their whole history of how they came to Earth, how their civilizations developed, fell, came back again, and it's kind of just told like a history book. It's like, okay, they lived like this, and then this happened, and so I guess all these archaeologists are just like reading this, like written in these like ancient alien tombs that they've discovered in the Antarctic. But I mean, that's a lot for the reader to have to go through. Is you're sitting through the author being like, hey, this is like one of the biggest no-nos in world building, right? Is you don't want to info dump. You want to work that knowledge into the story throughout. Part of this could be that Lovecraft is trying to do this in under like 120 pages, so he might have to tell more than show than he would like. But yeah, it's a lot of just telling you the history of these aliens, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was super fascinating to see, Lovecraft create this whole unique species of, conscious, well, all beings are conscious, can't think of the word, like intelligent beings, basically, akin to humans, and how they developed and made their way, and how they ended up in a pretty tight spot now where they're sort of not even the dominant species on the planet, where it's humans who've taken that role, in their not passing, but their sort of hibernation into the Antarctic and the deep parts of the sea. But yeah, it's just a lot of info dumping, and it's also kind of a slow burn story. It's a slow crawl. You start in the beginning, you're on the mainland, and then all the people come to the Antarctic on their expedition, and it takes a lot of time to really get into like the super intrigue of okay, we're at this campsite and like everyone dies, and then it's like okay, now the story's getting started. But it takes a while to get to that rolling point, which that and the combination of the info dumpingness of the story is sort of why I have to put. While although I really loved it, at the Mountain Madness probably wouldn't be my entry point to Lovecraft if I had to recommend, and number 4 on this list. Now, I'll be honest with y'all, 1 through 3 is really a toss up. I mean, all these stories had just that certain atmospheric energy of horror that Lovecraft can put into these short stories, and they all do it wonderfully. So it was kind of a challenge to decide the 3 through 1 spot. Um, Another controversial take, though. At the number 3 spot, I put The Call of Cthulhu. Now, this story is super interesting, right? We get um, a man who comes across his professor, uncle, or father, or grandfather. He has a relative who was a pretty high professor in the field of anthropology, archaeology, one of those like humanism sort of things. And he comes across this like sort of ancient uh, old one alien artifact. And we see that he starts to interview this young artist who is like, who had went crazy during a certain time of event where it is later revealed it is linked to the releasing of Cthulhu or, one of the ancient alien beings. Meanwhile, others cultists were doing like a ritual as well. It's like all of this was connected. It was sort of like super cool world building. We get to see like how this artist in New York or New Jersey was affected by a cult meeting in Louisiana and the releasing of Cthulhu somewhere out in the Atlantic somewhere, I believe, if I remember correctly what ocean it was. But so the world building is just awesome. The interconnectedness was great. Again, Lovecraft's style is just very descriptive, but I really enjoyed it. So why Cthulhu at third? I just think that it's got the interesting premise. It executes on it, but I think I found myself enjoying the conflict and struggle that later characters go through in the next 2 short stories than the ones in this one in particular. Um, I like the framing narrative, but it's not my favorite from the other stories of the other point of view characters who are not the narrator who's telling the story. I think I enjoyed the framing structures in the other 2 to come more than this one. This being sort of just he wasn't the one in the field. He was just going through his father's work and kind of sort of doing some research and reflecting on what happened, trying to find answers. But again, the Call of Cthulhu, I mean, you've seen all the Cthulhu iconography. It's of course it's a super immense story in the canonical literature, of the Americas of just cosmic horror in general. So it's currently raining and thundering where I'm at. So kind of fits the atmosphere of this video, right? But I digress. Number 2, we have the Dunwich horror. Let's start with the negative. There's a certain excerpt from the story that sort of reveals, Lovecraft's personal prejudices. I can't think of the line in particular. I think it's how he describes a certain character that I was like, oh, that's kind of a yikes moment. But I usually when I'm reading a work, I like to try to take it on its merit of its own and not what the author's own views are. But that sort of goes only as far as the author does not insert those things into the story. This was an example of the author's prejudices bleeding onto the page, which was not cool, man. And I ranked it number 2. What does that say about me? Anyways, the Dunwich horror I really enjoyed because we have this unique setting of this like abandoned town that the narrator's taking us through, and then it's like, well, the reason this town is abandoned and no one lives here anymore is, well, let me tell the story. And then so you get the instance of the Dunwich horror. And I really did enjoy the like small town vibe of this, right? It's like the haunted small town story. I'm sure you can see many of that same lineage of story in like Stephen King's works and um, maybe Ronald Malfi as well. I've heard he has a story that's sort of a small town horror. That could be wrong though. Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass, but yeah, I really found myself enjoying the Dunwich Horror. The Dunwich Horror is the classic story of these humans who are you know ritualists, zealots, or whatever. Um, they basically summon an ancient being into the will of the earth, and now we have to deal with it. Thanks to those guys. So it's super interesting though because the story is like bit by bit by bit. We're starting to learn, what is transpiring in this little town because we have the son. I forget his name, but he's almost like the first attempt at trying to create or summon this alien being from a time long gone on the planet Earth. And we see that he dies in the sort of college library trying to find out more information on the Necronomicon, which is super cool idea. It's like a common text in that's dotted throughout all the stories of like the super occult, text that people, evil things are referenced in it. It was super cool to see our like first main antagonist son, who is developing mentally at a crazy rate. He's growing at a crazy rate. So he like is 6, but he has the intelligence of like an adult, and he's like 6'8". And then we ultimately get his grandfather sort of training him in like the evil arcane arts of how to summon this beast. And he then goes to the library at a college campus to try to find a copy of the Necronomicon to steal and bring back so they can finish their ritual or whatever. He ultimately dies, and a few of our main characters who are professors in sort of the archaeology, anthropology of this story, of that field in the story, they come across he's like deformed and grown. He almost looks sort of like something unhuman, right? Which is our first, not our first, but another instance of the foreshadowing of what is to come eventually to the city or the small town of Dunwich, which eventually is they release like something akin to the old one, or the old things, just basically this extraterrestrial being that is sort of, now wreaking havoc on this town. To which we find out that that being is invisible, and so we get our old crotchety anthroarchaeology professors to come out to the town of Dunwich and try to expel this beast from this realm. And I don't know. I think Dunwich. I think the small town setting works for me well. How would this town react to a larger than life hazard, I guess, or threat? And yeah, I think the characters, I think I found myself liking a little bit more. They had a bit of like, I guess, more spark, more character than them, especially like the evil characters in this one. It's like they have like these like weird eccentricities about them, and it's because, well, they're arcanists, are you trying to do arcane arts, and then we have like the noble professors who have to come in and then eventually save the day. And also the final scene where we get like the village people looking through the like telescope sort of thing, to see the final event happen from their perspectives, like on the hill, like all this crazy stuff, and they get a glimpse of what the alien looks like, and like some of them like pass out, and they're just like appalled and by seeing something that even the human mind has trouble comprehending, because it doesn't fit within our parameters of reality. But yeah, I really enjoyed the Dunwich Horror, but it is not number one because number one would be The Color Out of Space. Now, listen, this is number one because honestly, I'm biased. I'm a big sci-fi fan, so it was super cool to see the sci-fi cosmic horror element here because we're getting this sort of organism from somewhere beyond the realm of Earth, and how it inflicts these people in these ways that's hard to comprehend. We don't understand like what its goal is, what it's trying to do, and it's very much like if you've read the Annihilation series by Jeff Vandermeer, it's one of my favorite sci-fi series ever. I understand now why he gets the Lovecraft comparison because both of them have this excellent way of writing about things that like it's would be hard for us to comprehend because based on upon what our reality is, on what we've experienced in the barrier of what we are able to experience. And the color of space exemplifies that so well. Basically, we get this meteor that crashes into, this plot of land. And it's first seems like a good thing, right? Because the plants are growing quicker and they're bigger. So for a farmer, this is like the ideal situation. Then we find that the fruit is rotten, like it tastes terrible and you can't eat it, or like not the fruit, but like the grain and all that stuff, all the stuff that this farmer's planting, you can't eat, and it's like soiling the land, souring the land would probably be a better word there, because we see that everything starts to turn like a shade of like gray and like mucusy, like this land's like not even usable anymore, because it's completely destroyed by whatever this thing is. And the whole story is being the framing narrative for this one is the whole story is being recalled by an old gentleman who used to work with the farmer, whose farm eventually uh, turned to hell. Uh, and he's telling the story to a visiting surveyor who's looking to, raise the land where the color out of space came and afflicted it, and put like some water there. I think like a lake or something over it. But eventually, then the story's like, heaven forbid anyone uses this land to drink the water because it's cursed. But yeah, we get this color out of space. We get this super climactic scene at the end where, they're all huddled in the house trying to hide and escape from this great reckoning that's happening around them. They see the they see the specific shade of color that has qualities of the colors on our spectrum, but is also developed aspects of color that we have never seen before, have no understanding of, and we see like the farm rattle, and like something like about to go down in the well. We've gotten hints at the malice inside of the well on the farm because one of the farmer's kids would always go to the well and he had this insane infatuation with it, and eventually he would I think he's found in the well, like his body dead or something. He was just so attracted to this well, and one by one we could see this farmer's family get picked off by this like reckoning alien specimen that is like driving them insane by its properties in some aspect, and it has that weird shade of color to it that it sort of displays uh, on the parts of this world that it has affected. So like the grayish color that it is put into the wildlife of this farm. And the final scene of this one's also incredible because we get the group of people escape, and then they're watching the farm, and where the color out of space attacked it, and like we watched this like huge like can't remember. It's been a while since I read these guys. It's been about a month or two, but something happens to the farm. It's like this great spectacle to watch it because it's like this super alien thing happening to this planet. And it shoots up into the sky, and then I suppose it's gone. But there is theories that a piece of it still lays in the farm somewhere. The piece of this thing that had fell to Earth. Um, but yeah, I think Color Out of Space has taken a more spot for me because again, I love the sci-fi element, and I love when aliens aren't understandable because I think it's like the most accurate depiction of them, right? Because you see a lot of media where aliens, look like us or like have humanoid structures or at least like speak some sort of language, or they're based upon something that we can understand. Like you have insect aliens a lot or like reptilian aliens. But I love it when the alien is something that's like there's no form of communication with it. Like, how are we going to communicate with this thing? It has a completely different approach to its reality. Like, maybe it speaks through time, or like Arrival, for example, is one movie I love that does aliens, I think, justice. Or again, the Annihilation series, and I think this story just hits on that perfectly. Like, it is the progenitor of, I don't know, I probably don't use that word, but it's what started this, and I have a great appreciation for that. And I think this story executes on it well. Once you work through the Lovecraft stories, you'll begin to understand that Lovecraft has this thing where he's like, and this was undescribable because no man could understand this, and it could never be put into words what I saw that day. But if I had to, though, this is probably what it would look like, right? Um, and like, so we get an idea of what the old ones look like, right? They're like octopus, type winged beings. It's like we can sort of get an an image of what they look like. The color of space, it's almost like you can't. And I think that's what I love about it and why it takes the number one spot. Before we conclude this video, I would like just to touch on Lovecraft's writing a little bit more. I think you can definitely tell that he was, very learned in the arts of grammar and stuff like that. His structure is really well. He has a very vast vocabulary. I think an archaeologist would love Lovecraft, right? Because he uses a bunch of like terms for like soapstones and how certain things are built based on like ancient structures of, or like he also references artists a lot, like painters. So he's like the landscape looked like something out of this painter's work. But you can definitely tell there's a lot of intelligence there, and it really does show in his writing. And that's one thing that I found myself really loving. So I'm learning a ton of new words while reading Lovecraft. But he also, it's like very approachable at the same time too, because he's dealing with, here's the alien invasion. It's a simple concept to get your head around, and despite me just going on a tangent about how you can't understand the aliens, but it's like he uses big words, but the structure of his story is so neat that it like lends itself to being like pretty readable. It's not like something that you're going to have to pour a lot of mental effort over. Just a quick Google search of a term or two that he uses that maybe isn't used anymore, or that's hard to understand. But is he like too descriptive? Maybe at times. I think his worst case of is at the Mountains of Madness, where he's very info dumpy on the aliens. But it's like the rest of the stories don't have that aspect. You don't really get to understand the culture of the aliens. You're sort of just like, oh god, here's this extraterrestrial force. Like, what do we do now? We're just humans. And but yeah, overall, I really did really enjoy his writing. Despite him maybe being a terrible human being. But thank you guys for watching. There's about 3 or 4 more stories left of Lovecraft in this collection that I have. So if y'all want a part 2, let me know. But again, to review the structure, at 4 is At the Mountains of Madness, 3 Call of Cthulhu, 2 The Dunwich Horror, and then number 1 is Color Out of Space. So thank you all for watching. I'll see you next Sunday, and have a good one.